joining me on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. You get to hear him on Countdown to Kickoff Sundays and Mondays with Tony Bruno. He's on the call for Temple football. He played college football at the highest level, played in the NFL, got drafted by the XFL. He is Colin Thompson. He joins me now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Colin, how you doing today?
Doing well, Josh. Thanks for having me on, man. You sound great.
I appreciate you jumping on. So before we get to anything else, I did want to touch base with you about Temple's win on Thursday night. 6 straight years now, Temple is bowl eligible. Huge win by the defense in that game. A great performance. I understand it's USF, but those Thursday, Friday night games we've seen all year long have been a fluky situation. I mean, I'm watching that Washington-Oregon State game last night, and both those teams could barely score for the first 3 quarters. It was so bizarre. So, for Temple to go to South Florida, it's not a traditional schedule, not a traditional week, get a win, the defense performed the way it did. I think it's a credit to the coaching. I think it's a credit to the kids.
No question. And I think it helps, too, when you have a bye. They didn't have a crazy short week. They didn't have a game on a Saturday night, and then they roll into a Thursday night game. They had a bye, which Temple needed. They were skidding backwards and really had no identity as a team. People were questioning the starting quarterback, which I think was unfair. But it's a credit to the kids, right? This is the, 6th year you said? Bowl
6 years,
in a row? 6 years. 3 different head coaches. Put that in perspective. Temple loses coaches for the right reasons because they're good. Most teams lose head coaches because they stink. So these coaches go to different programs. Really 4 head coaches if you count Manny Diaz, who went to Miami. That's Matt Rule, Jeff Collins, Manny Diaz, and now Rod Carey. You're in a bowl game. Some other coaches that were there that are successful: Steven Dazio, Al Golden. So Temple's had a great tradition of coaches, but it's the players. They're all local for the most part. Jersey, ton of Jersey talent, Baltimore talent, Philadelphia talent, Western PA talent, and a huge win going down for the Bulls. Jagger Gardner had a career day running the ball, 25 carries for 133 yards, and he's their backup. Jaden Blue, their star receiver, had 11 catches for 121 yards. And Temple went from, we're just going to be in a bowl game, this is great, to now, after the loss last night, UCF losing to Tulsa, Temple's second in the East, and if they win out, they're in the Eastern title. So a season seemed lost after really getting your butt whooped against SMU and UCF, to now you have a shot to win out and control your own destiny, which is that's all you ask for.
Absolutely. And, looking at the overall picture of college football, I think for Temple to be a competitive program and keep getting better, I think it's good for the Northeast, because let's be realistic. The Northeast is not traditionally a hotbed for college football power. Outside of Penn State, and Syracuse for, a couple of short windows, the Northeast, when it comes to schools like Rutgers, UConn, UMass, BC, these are not traditional powerhouses. So for Temple to have the opportunity to accumulate talent and be competitive, especially in a market like Philadelphia, I think is a real testament to the program. I think it's also a testament to the region.
No question. It is a testament to the region for sure. And there's so great high school football here. How many kids get plucked out every year? And we're watching Michigan, and there's a kid from South Jersey. Or we're watching Florida, where I went to start. The starting tight end now, he's an Archbishop Wood kid from Pennsylvania. I went there, Archbishop Wood kid from Pennsylvania, and I was a tight end in the University of Florida. So you're recruited nationally, and they recruit this area, and they pluck kids out. But the challenge is, can you get kids to stay? And what Temple does is, here's an opportunity to come play, and now you're going to a bowl game every year. When Temple was a 30-year drought period, 30 years of no bowl. So we were talking on the way home after the USF game, on our way back to Philly, and now it's a normal thing to go to a bowl game. And it's a credit to Temple in a really tough division now in the American Conference. I think it's safe to say Power 6 now instead of Power 5.
Colin Thompson joining me on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, you've heard him on Countdown to Kickoff Sundays and Mondays. And speaking of Countdown to Kickoff, I opened the show talking about the Eagles, Colin. I want to get your perspective on this. To me, I think the Eagles have made a clear sign the last couple of weeks that signing Jordan Matthews, letting go of Andrew Sendejo, keeping their draft picks, they're sending a clear message that, look, we still want to win this year, but we understand that we're getting old. Jason Peters, Darren Sproles, Malcolm Jenkins, Brandon Graham. These are guys who are either in the end of their prime or after their prime at this point. And I think the Eagles realize, whether the fans want to admit it or not, they need the ammunition for the future of this organization. They're going to keep being competitive. I think that has a lot to do with why they didn't make certain moves at the trade deadline and why they're making some of the moves they're making now with what people would consider patchwork, like Jordan Matthews.
Well, I think they valued the players coming off that were injured. No team is going to do as well, in my opinion, as the Eagles have done with the injuries they've had in pivotal positions. We all know how hard it is to play cornerback in the NFL now. You're up against it with the refs. You're up against it because these receivers are better than ever. The quarterbacks are better than ever. There's a good quarterback on every team now, it seems like. There's not like 14 good guys anymore. There's a good – everybody's got a good backup. There's more quarterback depth ever now than there's ever been. So I think, one, you're 100% right, they're getting old. I think the other thing is they're getting expensive. You're paying your quarterback, and which will kick in a year or two, about the max money you could be paying a quarterback. So there's not the same amount of room to build your team through free agency. So you're right, they have to draft. And I think they were aggressive in the trade deadline. I think they were, but I just think the prices were way too high for what they were getting. And Howie needs guys that are coming in on 3, 4 year deals, not 1 or 2 year deals. So I like what the Eagles done. I think they turned a corner. People say they need this deep threat receiver. How many teams have a deep threat receiver in the NFL? 10, maybe. Does New England have one? No. Does the Packers have one without Adams?
Not
no.
Really.
They did all these great. Everyone's infatuated with this deep receiver thing, and I'm like, they have explosive players. 2 tight ends are very explosive. Alshon, when you use him the right way, okay, he's had his drops, but he's a veteran receiver. He'll come back. He's explosive in different ways. And explosion doesn't have to be just down the field plays. Alshon's tough to tackle, and then you have Miles Sanders, who's grown into a role receiving wise that you can get explosive plays out of. So they have the weapons, and now I think they've been forced to change their game. I always say, where do you invest? Where's your money, which we just talked about? It's in the offensive line. They have high draft picks there. They pay Lane Johnson there. Obviously, Kelsey. Brooks is all pro. You have a first-round pick in left tackle. So, and you develop a guy like Sanalalu and Vaitai. So you have talent there. They've used that talent now, and now they have Jordan Howard to keep beating the rock. So I like the way the Eagles are heading. I'm actually optimistic of where they're going, and their schedule gets a little bit easier after these 2 games against Seattle and New England.
I want to reappropriate a question to you that I asked Mike Gill earlier this week on the Sports Bash, and I want to ask you specifically because you played at the highest levels. You were around some of the best athletes in the game. The Philadelphia Eagles, they have drop issues. All their receivers. It's not just this year. It's been the last few years under Doug Peterson. Who do you blame for the drop issues with this team?
The players. They blame themselves, too. I mean, you can't say this receiver coach isn't putting us through drills enough to catch the ball. You have to focus and make that catch. I am a big Jimmy's and Joe's over X's and O's guy. I always say that because it's on the players. You can say what you want about Doug Peterson or this OC or that OC. Every play is designed to score a touchdown. Every single play. Against every coverage, whether it's man or zone. There's checks now the football game has changed so much because of the knowledge we have now. Quarterbacks are reading defenses pre-snap. They're reading defenses post-snap. Receivers aren't just running routes anymore. They're reading defenses. So, to me, it's on the players. You want to get it done, it's on your players, and they have plenty of talent in that position. The thing is, we knew Nelson had drop issues, and he still does well with 5-6 catches games, but people hold him on this pedestal that he's got to get 1 million catches. He is what he is. So have that expectation that he's a solid number 3 receiver, number 4 receiver, but people hold him to a number 1 position. The drops from Alshon are inexcusable, and he'll tell you that. So to me, it's on the players and not the coaches.
So what is the best way for the Eagles to solve this problem moving forward then? Is it something where they go into the offseason and they overhaul the receiver group? Is it something where the organization is patient with some of the younger players? How is the best way to handle that moving forward? Because obviously this year it's the roster the way it is. It's 2019. There's X number of games left. But for 2020, you want to put the best team around Carson Wentz as possible to be successful.
Well, for 2019, I would keep feeding him the ball. It's like Steph Curry's going cold. Hey, Steph, keep shooting. They have to keep throwing the ball. down the field. And I'm not saying, 40-yard bombs, but Nelson makes plays. He drops balls short, but he's going to make enough plays to get by and stay on a roster. He'll play for forever. He's a good enough player and a first-round pick. And Alshon's been a Pro Bowl type receiver. You have to keep beating him the ball, keep shooting three-pointers. It's the same analogy I've had. They've caught a lot more passes than they've dropped, and they're good veteran guys that will get the job done. I'm very optimistic about it. Same with the tight ends. Now for the future, and that's why you don't give a ton of draft picks up to go get a Patrick Peterson or go get whomever, because it's too expensive. You need to draft a wide receiver next year in the top 3 rounds. We don't know what J.J. Arcega-Whiteside's potential is. I think he will have a better year next year, second year in the league. The coaches tell you things. There's a reason why he's not on the field. You have to draft another defensive back, maybe multiple next year. You have to address the defensive line issues because they don't have depth in those positions, and they're older. The depth is older, so they have to draft a linebacker. They have to really do well next year in the draft. I'll leave it at that. Have a Colts-type draft where you're going to get 2 All-Pros in Nelson and the linebacker Leonard type situation, because if they don't, they won't have the money that they used to have to spend. Now, Peters will be off the books, so that will help. I would assume he's not going to be back with the team next year. So they have to spend money. They have to hit it in the draft, Josh. That's the only way, in my opinion, they'll be able to sustain success moving forward with that Carson Wentz contract.
Colin Thompson joining me on the Boardwalk on the hotline on 97.3 ESPN. Follow on Twitter at Colin Thompson TU. Colin, to switch it back to college football, we're going to have the LSU-Alabama game here on 97.3 ESPN. Less than an hour from now, I'll be talking with Laura Rutledge from SEC Nation. But I want to get a perspective from you about this matchup. I feel like this game today, as we come down into the quarterbacks, historically, Alabama, LSU, they always had these monsters on defense. But I feel like both defenses, they're a little bit weakened this year. It's not as deep on the defensive side. And I feel like this is going to be an offensive showcase of whatever quarterback performs their best. That's probably going to be a team that wins today.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's going to be a shootout. They have so much talent. Look at this number against Florida, a great defense, a great pass rush. Joe Burrow, 21 for 24, 293, which is a lot in college, and 3 TDs against an elite defense in college football. But that was at home. Florida, so LSU's got big wins at home this year, Auburn, Florida. And against Auburn, he puts up great numbers too, 321 yards and a TD. So Burrow's your Heisman. The league ended today probably. The season ended today. But Tua Tagovailoa, he's coming back. They said it today. Ed Orgeron said it today on College Game Day. So if those two are back with those groups of receivers, now Alabama has good corners, so is LSU. So it's a perfect matchup. 2 versus 3. It's exactly when you wanted the 3:30 slot. SEC football, you can't beat it. Just the great voices of SEC football are going to be doing the game on CBS. So, and listen here live on 97.3 after 3:30. And you're having Laura Rutledge on, huh?
Yeah, coming up at 1:30. Yep.
Wow, big time, man. She's big time. She's a Gator. So you got 2 Gators. You had 2 Gators on your show today.
I know. What are the odds, right?
What are the odds? But no, like you said, it's a quarterback duel. It's going to be raucous there. College Game Day was there in Tuscaloosa today. You can't beat SEC football. For those of you who have not been to a game, obviously I played there. It's fantastic. It's a whole nother world. That's their pro sports down there. It's all they focus on. So it's fantastic. I'm looking forward to all. We got great games all day today.
Absolutely. One more before I let you go. I know you also do the Not For Long podcast. You and Mike Gill just started that podcast a couple of weeks ago. I want to get your perspective on the Chase Young situation. For those who don't know, Ohio State, he's probably the best player in the country. And it looks like he's going to be out now for 4 games. Ohio State is trying to appeal it. He took a loan to fly his girlfriend to the Rose Bowl to watch him play. He ended up he claims he's paid back the loan. The NCAA is basically being a bunch of sticklers about the whole situation. It just feels to me, and I want to get your perspective on this, it just feels like the NCAA is totally reaching on this situation.
Yeah, I don't know too much about the details of did he pay, did he not pay. I don't know if anybody would do. I do trust Kurt Herbstreit. He's an Ohio State guy. He lives right there in Columbus, I believe. He's got a ton of connections in Ohio State. He said today Ohio State's going to appeal it, and it's going to get down to 2 games. So that's what really matters for Ohio State football. But in what it matters with the integrity of the NCAA, I don't know. They're under a microscope right now. So everything they do is going to get criticized, especially with the new Pay-to-Play Act getting blessed, getting passed. But if he took a loan and he paid the loan and he had normal whatever interest rate per se or whatever, then what makes it different than a college student taking a loan and paying it back? Why is he suspended for that? Did he get improper benefits? If you worked out a deal, if he took $1,000, say, and paid the guy $1,000 back, and that was the deal because he knows the person, then what's the real issue? So this is a big deal for the NCAA, because he's not just getting paid $1,000 and saying, hey, just look, help me out when you get to the league. This is, I paid the loan back. So really, it's breaking even. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens. The NCAA, like I said, under a microscope, under the telescope, everything they do gets criticized. Hopefully they get this one right and figure it out. But if Ohio State appeals it and gets 2 games, that's a win for Young, and that's a win for Ohio State.
Before I let you go, you got a pick for LSU, Bama?
I got LSU today. I like Joe Burrow. He's going to make his claim to be the number 1 quarterback going out against a tough defense and on the road at Alabama, Tuscaloosa. It's going to be wild there. But I hear Baton Rouge is the toughest place to play, so it's going to be nothing that they haven't seen before. So, yeah, I like Joe Burrow. I like LSU. It's going to be a good one.
Follow him on Twitter at Colin Thompson, TU on Twitter. You can catch him on Eagles Count to the Kickoff, Monday Night Count to the Kickoff at the Landmark with Tony Bruno, as well as I mentioned the Not For Long podcast himself, Mike Gill, and Hunter Brody on that. Colin, appreciate your time on a Saturday.
Thank you, Josh. Anytime, my friend.